enjoy the sun and have a good time. But the theme of today is the living wage. And you know, since the advent of the Industrial Revolution, working people have been demanding, and probably before that, demanding a living wage. And yet, still, we find ourselves in the second decade of the 21st century in the 7th richest country in the world, calling for the same thing.
May Day is the International Workers' Day, and I think people forget what the trade unions have done for people. They brought us the kind of 8-hour day, the weekends, most of the terms and conditions, annual leave, and now, you know, they're under attack by this government, so we have to stand together, and that's what May Day is about for me now. It's about the trade unions and other organisations coming together, remembering our history and being proud of the fact that we still stand for workers' rights, we still stand for ensuring that our terms and conditions, sick leave, etc., aren't eroded any more than they are already. I work in the civil service, and they're also attacking trade union facility time. This is the time that trade union reps have to represent other people, do personal cases, etc. So it's not surprising such a nasty right-wing coalition government is attacking trade union rights, because we're the very people who defend people against the attacks on our living standards, on working conditions.
I think May Day is important to me because it's a link to trade union and working class heritage, really. It's something that's a little bit of a dirty word, working class, but working people, people who work for a living, or however you want to put it, this is an important link to that. As I understand it, May Day was originally a day of protest when it was established in the 1890s, but it evolved into a kind of secular Easter, kind of rebirth and renewal. And I think here in Norwich that's quite important because the Trades Council has been very quiet, been dormant for a long while. And this is the first year or so that the Trades Council has been back in full bloom, so to speak. So it seems quite appropriate that we have a May Day celebration, a rebirth of the Trades Council to kind of represent that. So for me, it's an important link to the past and also an important link to today and the future of the Norwich Trades Council.
Well, as someone who until recently I'm young, obviously, and I had a basically minimum wage job at Costa Coffee. It was very apparent to me how much we need the ideals of May Day and how relevant they are, because I mean the working day was long, the boss was always on your back, and at the end of the day you didn't even bring in enough money to actually make ends meet. And that's something that millions of young people up and down the country are feeling at the moment, and it's only going to get worse unless we actually have a movement against those kinds of things. And that's what May Day is all about. It's about coming together and realising that there are problems in society, and the solution to those problems are actually things like collectivism, like dare I say socialism, ideas that are really timeless and actually mean a lot to ordinary working people. That's what May Day really is.
I love a celebration, so anything that is celebrating is brilliant, but May Day is actually deep in our heart because it's about celebrating workers. Workers are castigated. It started off by Thatcher talking about the miners as the enemy within, but there's a thread of castigation of workers, but we're the people who actually create the wealth of the country. So May Day is vital, and of course the international dimension is important because we don't live, I was going to say we don't live on an island, we do live on an island, but we're so interconnected with the rest of the world, and we need to forget the trials, we need to remember the trials and tribulations of our colleagues abroad.
I think May Day is really important because it's always been an opportunity to sort of raise awareness for workers' rights and what working people do in society, which is not always at the forefront of sort of, you know, the media and that sort of thing. I'm really glad to see everyone out here today. It's really brilliant to see all these people out. Luckily, it's a very sunny day, which is really lucky. Yeah, I mean, particularly at the moment, we're seeing a lot of attacks on working people, the most in a long time, and we need to sort of, you know, get out there and let people know that they're not alone, that there is support out there for them. I'm from Unite Community, and we are working on the community membership scheme, which kind of gives people who wouldn't normally be able to join a trade union the opportunity to get involved and have support there.
Stop taking just because. think it's important. We've just been talking about the Burst and Strike rally, which is a rally that happens in South Norfolk every September on the first Sunday of September, and that was a rally about our history, about the longest strike in history which happened in Norfolk. And I think what we've got to do is celebrate not just the idea of workers per se and organising a fight back, but actually fighting back. I think we need a period of strikes. I think we need a period of campaigning, of challenging the very status quo that is imposing upon us things, you know, huge amounts of attack on working class people and the poorest in our society, and that's what I think is brilliant about rejuvenating the idea of May Day as a celebration of working people fighting back.
To me, May Day is about people coming together to celebrate what can be achieved when people work collectively. It's time to kind of reflect, and I think about the working conditions that I enjoy compared to my grandmother and the rights that she had or didn't have at work in terms of equal pay, and my grandparents having holidays and things like that. So it's really a celebration and thinking about what can be achieved through collective action.
May Day has been celebrated since the 19th century, and it's a celebration of the traditions and the struggle of the working class movement that represents an alternative politics to the politics of the rich and the powerful, who've always tried, as we see today with the present government, to exploit workers as much as possible. May Day is a festival that shows that our movement has got independent ideas and can produce independent politics that stand for something different, a society run by and for the majority, and a society in which working people can win political power.
May Day is important to me as a trade unionist because it's the day we celebrate trade unions and solidarity between trade unions and the things that trade unions have achieved on behalf of their members and on behalf of workers in general. It's very important that we come together and recognise where we've got to and where we've still got to go to. And the theme for today is particularly the living wage, which is becoming more and more important in Britain. It's disgraceful, I think, that in one of the richest and most powerful countries in the world, we have people, and not just the very poor people, but people who would normally have been getting by. We've got people having to go to food banks, we've got people who are really struggling. We heard in the news today that people are having to borrow to buy food, which is just appalling. And the living wage, which trade unions are campaigning for, would be not necessarily the whole answer, but it would certainly be enough to get people out of having to take charity just to live, and that's really important in 2013 in Britain.
Campaigning for a living wage as working people, calling for it since the advent of the Industrial Revolution, probably before that. And I think to find now in the second decade of the 21st century as the seventh richest country, and we're still calling for it, is a disgrace really. And I think it's time now that political parties, especially my own, began to address that and do something about it, and this is all part of that.
Boris Johnson, he says that it's an idea whose time has come, and I think again, the idea that you can work and not earn enough to make ends meet, you can work really hard in these stores and not earn enough. It's ridiculous, especially when these companies are raking in millions of pounds and CEOs giving themselves millions of pounds worth of bonuses. It's a damning indictment of our society as it is today, and as I said, with this Tory government, it's only ever going to really get worse. They're looking at getting rid of more workers' rights and more rights to things like a 20-minute break, rights to not working outside of the 48-hour working week. And that's partly what it's trying to combat. It's trying to say, look, you deserve more. As a person who works really hard for this company, draws in a lot of profit, you deserve a hell of a lot more than you're getting right now. And the way to win it is to organise yourself in the workplace, to organise yourself collectively, to come out on strike when you're strong in your workplace, and actually hit the boss where it hurts, in its pockets, and say, we deserve more respect, we deserve a higher day's pay, and yeah, that's my opinion of the living wage.
Well, basically it's criminal that there are people working who can't live on their money. I mean, we have a whole system that is supporting people who are basically being underpaid. So what we're doing is subsidising employers through the tax system. That's wrong. It's not wrong insofar as these people need the money, but it's wrong in principle. So the living wage is a small step that takes us towards a level of not just surviving, but living, hence the name, so that when the unexpected happens, like the kettle breaks down, it's not a crisis, it's a difficulty but not a crisis. So very supportive of the living wage, and would like to see it much further spread much wider, and know that trade unions are negotiating it all over the place, in fact.
Yeah, the living wage campaign is something that's ongoing across the country and in Norwich as well. It's really important. I mean, ultimately, if you work full-time on minimum wage, that often is not enough income to support yourself and the family, which is just terrible. That needs to change. People who work full-time, who work really hard, a lot of the hardest jobs are the lowest paid jobs, and it is not fair that they are paid not enough to live on. That needs to change. And I mean, it won't solve all inequality, but it's definitely a good start in the right direction.
I think that's absolutely right, because the attacks on the poorest in society through the bedroom tax, through all the austerity measures, are a means of trying to get rid of even the minimum wage. I sincerely believe that the coalition would like to get rid of the minimum wage. A living wage, and with a fight for it, would also be a fight for the poorest in our society, who for no fault of their own are on benefits, like housing benefit that's being attacked by the Tories and the Lib Dems at the moment.
Okay, it's one of the things that for the last year I've been campaigning on, and was really clearly in everything I put out in the election, that the state shouldn't be used to subsidise poverty wages, and I will be campaigning for the county council and all of employees, including subcontracted out staff, to pay a living wage, which at the moment is £7.45 an hour, but I'm really pleased that we're commissioning some research locally to find out whether actually £7.45 is a living wage for Norwich, because we're obviously a high cost and low wage economy, so it might even need to be higher in this area.
The living wage is, of course, something that's going to improve the living standards of the lowest pay in this society, of the lowest paid workers in this society. It must be implemented to all those workers, including those who've been outsourced into private sector companies. All of those companies must take responsibility for implementing the living wage.
I heard you on the wireless back in 52, laying awake and I'm tuning in on you. If I was young, it didn't stop you coming through. They took the credit for your second symphony, rewritten by machine and new technology. And now I understand the problems you can see. I made your children. What did you tell them? Video killed the radio star. Video killed the radio star. In my mind and in my car, because you wild, we've gone too far. And now we meet in an abandoned studio. We hear the playback and it seems so long ago. And you remember the jingles used to go. Oh, oh, you were the first one. Oh, oh, you were the last one. Video killed the radio star. Video killed the radio star. In my mind and in my car, we can't rewind, we've got to